Hello.
Good evening, Ross.
Hello, how are you doing?
A Raisin to Believe. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, doing well. Sorry, I'm a minute late. And the good news is the sound is working. Welcome to Graham Chalmers, regular co-host, and welcome to novelist and more than novelist, of course, Ross, also from the School of English at the University of Leeds, and not just a
Yes.
novelist, but also written a book on creative writing as well. So I like the fact that, not only writing novels, but actually telling others how to write them as well, which seems to me,
And
and
yeah,
also teaching on that
Well,
very talent as well.
I don't know
and the
if I'd.
prize winner.
And a
Yes,
that's grand
yes,
prize winner.
Yeah.
yes. Suddenly, that's right. I notice about the two of you that you're not inside a car. I thought that was the premise was that you did this from a car, but not true.
Well, it's
So
inspired
we're
by
a
a car
fraud.
journey.
Yeah,
Yeah. Every
we're
year we drive
complete
up to
fraudsters.
Edinburgh. Yeah, every year we drive up to Edinburgh for the Fringe, especially for the Edinburgh National Film Festival. And we
Ah,
spend the whole time talking about the arts in the car on the way up. And we both think we're right the whole time. So I know that the digital world's all niche. So calling it two big egos in a small car is probably not the right idea. But we don't
I
really
think
care. We're not trying to like play the game.
hmm, I
No,
think it
and
works this way.
whenever you get to anyone to try to repeat the title, invariably they get it wrong. But it's stuck in our memory, maybe not in others. But actually, that's look. I'm going to throw that in straight away, Ross, because you called a novel "God's Own Country," which I get annoyed when people call it "God's Own County." The whole point of this is that Yorkshire's ego is so huge that the county isn't sufficient. That's the bloody point of it. It's God's own country. And of course, I mean, plenty of attention came to that, and indeed and the subsequent film, I think, wasn't there as well? That
Yeah, but the film's different though, isn't it? It's not Rossi's work. I don't
no,
think.
Ross,
No,
over to you.
um, the film is nothing to do with me now, and I haven't watched the film
Ah,
be because I quite wanted to, because a lot of people have told me that the film is very good, but I think at the time when the film came out, I think I felt what would be the right word? Irked. I think I'm happy to say irked.
hurt.
I wasn't as irked as the fella that I was working with at the time, who was wanting to adapt my novel, into what was hopefully going to be a TV series, but
Hmm.
um, that didn't happen. I mean, TV is a chaotic and slippery beast as it
Yeah,
is, and nothing is
exactly.
ever guaranteed.
Mm.
Is
But
it true? Yeah, sorry.
well, no,
Is it
just
true? Yeah, is it true, Ross, that you're from the Silsden area to a degree?
I am. How do you know that?
Well, I did a bit of research. But on top of that, Francis Lee, who made the film
Oh,
God's Own Country, he shot it around Silsden. So I could see why you might be slightly irked.
well, I felt at the time, and have chosen to feel subsequently, that I think it's all purely coincidental. But
Yeah.
Okay.
there were several coincidences um, around it that at the time, I was, in some ways, actually, I was fairly peaceful about it, but the guy that I was working with he was very irked, actually.
Mm. Mm.
um, and so yes, that didn't happen, and that was quite a large part of why it didn't happen. And so
Mm.
I decided that I wasn't going to watch the film, just because I try and limit the opportunities that I might give myself to get irked. So no,
Yeah,
and as you said to me, when I joined the call, that
Mm.
there are lots of films. There are lots of good films out there to watch.
Would
Mm.
Ross, would you like work to be transferred across to the screen? Is that something that you would like to happen with your work?
Well, yes, I think that's the short answer. But oh, I'm not long in the tooth. I don't think that's quite
Mm.
there yet. But I'm longer in the tooth than I was at the beginning of my certainly writing life. And I think I've come to realize that that kind of thing happening, an adaptation of your work for screen, is very much a cherry on the cake that you you just can't think about because it just, well, if you think about it, it just immediately becomes irksome because stuff happens like the incident that I just mentioned to you.
Yes, exactly.
I wrote another novel that came close. This was a football novel, A Natural. And that came very close, actually. That came very close to trying to pick my words, actually, because I don't want to say things that might be insensitive. But that came very close to a television series adaptation. And was in fact greenlit for that.
Gosh, yeah.
Which obviously is tremendously exciting if you're
of course.
You're a novelist and you ultimately I think you want your work to meet as many eyes as possible. And that's the big one, really. That and prizes is the way in which that happens, certainly in the game that I'm in, like literary fiction as it is called. And yeah, that was for reasons that I won't go into because wouldn't quite be appropriate, but it looked like it was going to happen, and then the director pulled out at the last minute. The commissioner went in a different direction, let's just say that.
Basically it was a near miss.
It was a near miss, but it's painful when that happens because inevitably by that point it's been greenlit for telly. The process has been ongoing for at least a couple of years. It had been, and I had, maybe slightly foolishly, I'd got my hopes up, and I had started to imagine what it would be like on the telly, and I'd been involved a little bit creatively with the project, and so then when the rug gets pulled out from your feet, it does leave you floundering a little bit, and I did flounder for a little bit around that, but then you move on and you remind yourself that that's not what it's about, and you'd be a bit silly if you built your hopes upon that kind of experience, because once in a blue moon, for somebody like me, certainly once in a blue moon, it might come off, and if it did, fantastic. But the baseline is that it's about the page. That's it.
Right.
But you are a success story because Ghost Kitchen, your short story, is won the BBC's National Short Story Competition for this year in conjunction with Cambridge University, which comes with a nice £15,000 prize, I believe.
Yes. Yes, it did. And I was very happy about that. It's fair to say. Partly happy because, like many writer friends I know, we all enter that prize every year because it's a good one, and it's easily entered. And if you've got a short story on the bubble, then you kind of think, well, why not? It's free to enter, and it's a good prize, and the process of the prize works and has integrity, which I know firsthand because I've been inside it. I've judged that prize before, and it was a wonderful experience judging that prize. So I enter it every year and have done for probably about 15 years. And I think eventually, if you roll the dice that many times, then something's going to come out. That's my attitude, and it happened, and it won, and I was very happy. And I made a bumbling speech on the radio, and then the next day I had 15 grand in my bank account, which is is great. And then on the night, I spoke to my children, who I hadn't meant to, but I'd slightly insulted them on the radio, and they reminded me of that. And then they said, "So what are we going to spend this money on? We're going to buy a new car because our car's a bit shot to pieces." And I very unromantically told them that no, we're not going to do that. That £15,000 is going to plug the projected shortfalls in our monthly income for the next couple of years. So it's not as exciting as a new car, but it's exciting for me because it means that I can. It means I can write, really, and what I have been writing for probably the last year or so is an adaptation of sorts of that short story, but not into screen, into a novel. That's what I'm working on.
I was going to ask that very question. How spooky was that?
Is that were you going to ask that question because the story feels like that?
Um,
Mm. Yeah, it
I,
does. Yeah, it feels like a section of a novel already.
yeah, I
Mm.
mean, I think it's sometimes. I mean, I guess there's an instinct that sometimes something is complete in one form. Sometimes I think there's an instinct that actually there's more where it can go, and maybe this is a case of that, Ross. You know, you obviously have done that, so you must have sensed that was a possibility. And on other occasions, I mean, as you say, you enter the competition each year. Others maybe you don't feel could be stretched into a longer version.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's pretty much exactly how I felt about it. So I wrote the short story um probably almost 2 years ago now, actually. And and I wrote it entirely as a short story. I had no eyes on it becoming longer. But after I had finished it, I realized I was still thinking about it. I was thinking about because it's a short story, but it's quite big. Like it touches on big things, thematically, certainly to do with work, to do with the gig economy.
Mm.
That's immediately obvious, but also to do with, and also immediately obvious is grief, one of my touchstones with my writing. But I realized in thinking about it, I was thinking I was thinking about asylum. I was thinking about the justice system. I was thinking about um, urban types of work, and
Mm.
yeah. So I kept thinking about it, and I realized that I wanted to place that thinking inside of the larger structure of a novel, and so it's quite an enjoyable process actually to think about, just to think structurally about how you might take an existing entity of a short story and take it apart, look at the constituent parts that you've got, the elements, and then put it back together again in a larger form, which is the process I've been doing, and a process I've done before actually with that novel I mentioned a moment ago, A
Mm.
Natural. That
Natural.
began
Yeah.
as a short story. That began as a short story that um, eventually became, by and large, a chapter around the middle of the book. Whereas with this project, that short story, Ghost Kitchen, is it's not quite as perfect as this, but like it's the first few chapters. It's the opening, but has already undergone quite a lot of manipulation, quite a lot of change to that opening in order to make it breathe differently, so it fits more inside a novel. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and
Mm.
it's interesting. I like it. I'm quite enjoying it, which is about as effusive as I will ever be about describing writing.
Yeah.
Quite enjoying it.
Yeah.
There's, yeah, there's two things about Ghost Kitchen that struck me, which is very good, by the way. First of all, it could only have been written the way it is written in Yorkshire. And secondly, it's
Mhm.
incredibly detailed in the way that every single scene gives you the precise flavour of exactly what's happening, where it's happening. And it feels like you yourself have actually been in all those places and done all those things. There's not a single second when you're reading it where it doesn't feel totally real. And I feel that's a very Yorkshire trait in writing
Mhm.
and indeed in filmmaking as well.
That's an interesting point. Um, there's well, it makes me want to ask you the question: what is it that makes you feel that it's set in Yorkshire?
Mm.
Well, I saw a film with Charles at this year's Edinburgh National Film Festival called The Ceremony by a young youngish Yorkshire director, Jack King. And it was about migrant workers in Bradford and set in the Dales. And it was bleak and it was black and white. And in some ways, it was very dark and it was a warts and all portrayal of life. But at the same time, there was a beauty to it and a sparseness but evocative way of telling the story that sort of like wasn't negative, even though lots of negative things were in it. And that feels very, very Yorkshire to me.
Mm.
That's interesting. That's nicely put actually, and that's making me think because yeah, it's not the story is not it's not pinned down geographically. I have a
Mm.
certain idea of where, certainly visually, where I imagine when I'm imagining various of the places in it. Um, but it's not. it's not pinned down, partly because I think partly because thematically some of the things that it touches upon, certainly the influence of the gig economy and upon society, is so pervasive that's it's universal. It,
Mm.
it's not pinned down a bull. And I think I wanted to retain the kind of macro um, potential of that. And also, and there's also I was lightly thinking with a legal perspective as well, because I think the more specific I made it, the more potential that could be legally tricky in terms
Mm.
of some of the things and the places that are depicted in it, the workplaces that are depicted in it.
Mm.
But I'm particularly interested in what you say about the kind of tangible visual aspect of it. I like that idea that that's a Yorkshire trait. I'm going to go away and chew on that, because I think you might be onto something. It's certainly something
I'd
that
say
is
Ted
very,
Hughes. I'd say Ted Hughes straight away to that.
yes, I'd say Ted Hughes. I'd say I'm just turning to look at my shelf. Um, um, Having not put my glasses on, not being able to read the titles of my books, but I'd say Stan Barstow.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and definitely that's a thing for me. Like I am a very, I think, visually oriented writer, which is not, it's just always how it has been with me. I like, in fact, I did an interview the other day. Since I've won this prize, I've done more interviews in the last 2 weeks than I've done in the last probably 5 years, which is quite nice. But I did an interview with a Dutch guy about football. It was for this sort of glossy Dutch football magazine. Different kind of interview to certainly this one and usual ones. It
Yeah.
lasted 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours.
3.5 hours it took.
Added extra time, added time.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that. Yeah, much like the Bradford Colchester game at the weekend that Bradford conceded in the 99th minute.
Oh, yes.
I don't think I conceded with a late mishap in that one, but it was interesting. One of the first things he said to me is he was talking to me about a book that he'd written about Johan Cruyff, and he said, "I think you'll like it because it's very visual." And I thought, "All right, that's interesting. I suppose, yeah, I probably would." And and I like scenes. I like pictures. I like being able to visualize a scene, and I like lots of different kinds of writing. But that's what I'm drawn to as a reader, and I'm very aware, both as a reader and as a teacher, that a lot of contemporary writing leans away from that. And
Why
this,
why is that the case, do you think, Ross, that it leans away from it? That's interesting straight away. Why is that the case?
oh goodness me, that's a big question.
Mm.
Well, a lot of contemporary fiction, I think, is abstractly interested. Like it's interested in ideas. I
Yeah.
think, and it's not, these are not catch-alls. Like it's not like writing never used to be interested in ideas. Of course, it did. And my writing is interested in ideas, but it likes to put them through a visual lens, I think, and to create scenes. And a lot of that, I think, is around conventions, I suppose, traditions of storytelling. I like
Mm.
scenes, I like plot, and those things go hand in hand, I think, with visuality.
Yeah.
Whereas quite a lot of contemporary fiction is not interested in plot and is very anti the idea of plot. Plot is, to some writers, a dirty word, which is fine. I don't feel like that, but lots do, and I respect that, and I like quite a lot of that writing actually. But if you are writing something that is mm, moving away from the idea of plot, moving away from the idea perhaps of character change, very interested in the cerebral, interested in ideas, interested in the self. So I mean, I know autofiction is. Some people say that it's on its last legs. I don't know about that, but certainly a lot of autofiction is probably more ideas based than picture based. It's a quite reductive
So it's almost as
flabby
if,
point, but
yeah, it's almost as if in an era of conceptual art, literature itself has become conceptual. It goes with the times we're in.
I think there's an argument for that. Yes, I think there is.
Where does it leave the adverb and the adjective?
um,
Which I love.
Equally,
Yeah.
adverbs and adjectives, or you know?
I think I just love the richness of language, and I think I'm absolutely with you about visual. I just think you want to create the world in someone's head. I mean, yes, they use their imagination to do that, but I think it needs trigger points. If it's just intellectual thinking in a book, I don't go with it. I want to be in the place. I like to feel. And I think if you're writing in Yorkshire, that's pretty well impossible not to do that. I mean, as a place, you know, it's so impactful visually because it's to call it the Texas of Great Britain. I'll stick with that. It's the Texas of Great Britain. You know, if you put the three writings together, it's more diverse than Texas. You have to say that, but the sheer scale of the place. I think the visual element is absolutely essential, and I think it shapes people as well. I think the nature of Yorkshire shapes its people who are here. It's why some people move to York, and if they don't leave after 3 years, they never leave because the landscape gets them and keeps them and won't release them.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a flat land, is it? There's nothing flat and dull and boring about Yorkshire.
There is about York.
Oh,
Oh,
York's flat. You're right.
controversial.
York's the flattest place I've. Well,
it is. It is.
Well, I've now lived here.
I went Copenhagen recently. That was very flat when I went there.
That's flat. Yeah, that is flat. Well, and York is just as flat. And I have now lived here for over 3 years, so I think I'm allowed to say it. It is flat. I don't think that's controversial.
No,
and
absolutely no.
Because as you've pointed out, I come from Silsden Moor. That's not flat, and those hills are in my bones. I think.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making there, Ross. I believe that strongly. You know, in shaping character. You know,
I think I agree with that. Yeah, it's one of the things that I do. I love York. It has a lot of good qualities, and I and my family are very happy here. But I think I'd be happier if there were hills around.
Exactly.
You're chiming with me there, Ross, because that's been my experience too of living in York in recent times, and sometimes I've missed the hills of where I normally would have been before. So. You know, but York's...
And if there was a hill in York, I think I'd want to live on the top of it because that would be the safest part of York.
I'm still always amazed there is actually a windmill in York. That does seem to be, you know, something of an achievement to have one, but we do. So,
where's this windmill?
So Holgate Windmill, yes,
Holgate. Oh, I've heard of that. All right.
Yeah, it's a working windmill. So yeah, and every so often they open and sell corn. Yeah.
This is
I've
good.
got a question for Ross, please. Yeah, sorry.
Go on, Graham. Question away.
Oh, go on.
I've got a question for Ross. Inspired by Ian Rankin. Because I've noticed on Ian Rankin's X posts or Twitter posts that he seems to be on his own a lot of the time, traveling, doing shows, and he takes a photograph of where he is. And it made me think about the life of a fiction writer. And I've just finished the first draft of my first book. It's a non-fiction book. And while writing for 4 years, thank you. While writing for 4 years, even when I'm trying not to think about the book, it's always been at the back of my head. It's impossible to shake it off until you've actually finished it. But I thought, at least the outside world doesn't influence me because it's a non-fiction book, a biography of a musician. Therefore, when I go about my normal business, nothing out there actually triggers a book thought. But for a fiction writer, the whole world you live in must trigger thoughts about any book or short story you're working on. And that sounds like a sort of like quite a lot of pressure. Or am I completely wrong?
I don't think there is a wrong or a right. I think every writer, whether of prose or non-fiction, is different. Certainly that's a particular state that people do talk about as fiction writers, that you get into a particular phase maybe of a book and a particular state of mind in which everything becomes related to the piece of fiction that you are writing. I wouldn't say I've ever fully found myself in that state. I'd love to. It feels like a wonderfully ideal state to me, but I don't know, just the practicalities of life have always been the main things I think that have precluded it, because and in some ways that's a benefit, and I think I'm in some ways quite glad, because I do, once I've left my desk, I generally don't think about the piece of writing that I'm writing at all. I go down and I make tea for my kids, and I do whatever else, and I'm not generally thinking about it. Although I think when I'm writing most fluently and probably actually most happily, it is when I'm in sort of mini periods of that state. So actually I went away. I went to Knaresborough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A couple of months ago, I went to Knaresborough because every now and again, maybe once or twice a year, I'll go away for a few days, maybe 4 days at a time, and find a little place, little bolt hole, just to write and do nothing else. That's what I tell my wife. I do nothing else, but actually, I sometimes.
So you were actually in Mother Shipton's cave is actually where you were, but
yes, and I found it so inspiring. I've got a whole chapter full of stalactites now in my gig economy
Ross,
novel.
one last question from me, and then one last one from Graham. Creative writing. When I think of one of those things I never quite get is when people think they can be trained in comedy. So the comedy schools learn to be funny. I don't think that's possible. I think one is either funny or one isn't. One can't hone that skill. I just don't believe that is the case. But with creative writing, maybe different. Maybe so. I guess my question here is, if someone genuinely strikes you as having absolutely no ability at creative writing, what do you say to them as opposed to someone who you can see there is potential in?
I think it depends what the forum is. Like creative writing has become this catch-all for what is in fact lots and lots of different kinds of teaching. So and I've been fortunate enough. I've been fortunate partly that I really like it. I'm fortunate as well in that I do lots of different types. So I work with primary school children, secondary school children, undergraduates, postgraduates, PhD students, other kinds of adult. I mentor writers who are sort of emerging writers writing their first works, all of which is kind of within the umbrella of creative writing teach, but it's all different. And so the answer to the question in terms of what the person is doing and how you encourage them or discourage them depends on the forum. But in fact, I mean, I say that because it's true, but also I would never discourage anybody, because I think because some of that, I think it feels quite like an old-fashioned idea of like you have to be kind enough to discourage people if they're not publishable, is an idea predicated on the idea that being published is vaunted, like that's the sort of golden arch that everyone's looking to get through, and I think that is not healthy, and I don't believe, I've got a whole podcast's worth of difficulties with the publishing industry, much as I also love lots of aspects to it, but I certainly don't think being published is the be all and end all and should be for a writer. I think if you've got an idea and you want to write it out, either just for yourself or because you would like any number of other people to read it, whether that's 2 people or 200 people or whatever, then that's a valid enough reason to write that you would want to improve the project that you're working on. And so, as a creative writing teacher and tutor, you figure out for that individual what's the best way you can help them to best achieve the project at hand for them, and that involves all sorts of different ways of thinking about it, ways of talking, different skills. And that's the joy of it for me, is like figuring out the individual, what they want, and how do you help them to get there. But that's always about improving their confidence and their craft.
Graham, last one to you, and a thank you at the same time to Ross, if you would.
Well, yeah, in the non-fiction book I've been writing, I only felt I understood what the book was about at the very end, which
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because I'm incompetent or whether that's a common feeling for people who actually write books.
Um, I mean, it sort of depends on what the non-fiction book is about. Like if you're writing a biography of Winston Churchill and you don't know what the book is about until the end, then something's probably gone awry.
Good point, Ross.
But you know,
Indeed,
but to me,
indeed.
I mean, it's that what you've just described there is just the process of writing. Like I think as a fiction writer, and again, you know, and I always reiterate this, every writer and every project is different and has different ways in and different ways out. But I've never begun anything and known exactly what it was that I was doing. And to me, there would be a stiffening quality to that would not be good for the work. It's important that you are open to it going in any direction that occurs to you along the way. And that's partly to do with writing, that's partly to do with research. It will, I think, a fiction project will usually take you in a direction you hadn't quite seen. And that is important because that's part of the whole thing. And to me,
Yeah.
there's a relation, you know, that's akin to being a reader. Like if you are a reader and you begin a book and you know exactly where it's supposed to head, that's usually quite boring. I want to be surprised. I want to be kept on my toes as I'm reading, just as I do when I'm writing. So I don't think it's the case that you've gone wrong somewhere. That sounds to me perfectly natural and the way it should be. So I wouldn't worry about it.
No, that's very nice to say so, Ross. And it's been such a joy talking to you. I can see why the guy in Holland could speak to you for about 3.5 hours because I can tell there's like a massive reservoir of stuff you could talk about with authority in an interesting way. And
I'm not
our
sure.
podcast only lasts 40 minutes. So
Well,
that was around to that one.
You're very kind. The main reason it took that long is because his questions took the form of here is question 2B, and then I'll follow it with question 2C to 2E. You know, yeah. But it was no, it was a pleasure talking to both of you.
Thank you so much, Ross.
And I think your short story Ghost Kitchen that won the award is in a new anthology of the short stories in the competition, which is published by Comma Press.
That's right. Yeah. Yes. I don't know. I've got it on my floor and it looks very pretty. Comma Press, who are also doing a book of Bradford for the City of Culture. Yeah. Which I'm going to be writing a story for, which I'm really looking forward to. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah. More to come, hopefully.
Thank you so much, Ross.
Yeah, you represent like the best of Yorkshire without
that cut out at the crucial moment.
Graham?
No, I think Ross should have the last word.
Oh, right. Okay. Ross, last word to you then. No pressure there.
Pudding, I think.
Pudding.
Okay.
Well, your interview has caught me at a very nice time. I had my tea. And now I've come up to talk to you guys, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to see if I can muster up a pudding. So my last word is pudding, I think.
Splendid.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Pudding it is.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. Absolutely brilliant.
Pudding it is.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross.
Bye-bye, Ross.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
So, Graham, thank you for that. And we're just going to continue really with the theme of writing in the last moments that we've got. I don't quite know how long we've got left.
Not long, I don't think.
Not long. But Graham, just you've been up to Scotland and you touched on you mentioned the book that you've been writing. Just to remind our listeners, book on Chris Simpson, the founder and leading member of Magna Carta. And the book rejigged and a new extract that you'd like to perhaps see out our episode with if there's time.
Yeah, it's when he moved from Harrogate, having lived at Bristolworth in an old stone house on a hill and going to school at Harrogate Grammar School. He moved out to London to study divinity at King's College in the early 1960s. And the stories of this musician who's travelled the world and tasted fame, but he's always remained a man of Yorkshire. So there's a lot of Yorkshire in the Dales in the book. And this bit's quite long, so I'm not sure we'll actually get through it, Charles. Should we pause that for next week and instead go to a preview of our?
I can't, unfortunately, because I can't see Anthony to see how many minutes we've got left, and there's no timer.
Yeah. Well, let's do this.
Can we just scrap this bit of it?
Yeah.
Now, here goes Anthony. We've got, what, 1 minute left? Right. Shall we just
Yeah.
instead say next week we will do the following? Graham, as part of the next week, will talk about how his book is progressing with Chris Simpson from Magna Carta. Also going to be looking at his favourite books of the year, and the two of us, more to the point, are going to be looking at our best films of the year and our favourite albums of the year. So that will be next week's show, and we very much look forward to that. It's always one of our favourite shows of the year. And thank you once again to Ross Raisin for being our guest tonight, and thank you, Graham, for researching that, and thoroughly enjoyable meeting up there with Ross.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.